Well, it's a beautiful Sunday morning. Everything's quiet, so I thought I'd do some more videos for you. Okay, this is more or less what I do in my introduction to bonsai class. Typically, it's a 2-hour class that is recommended for people just getting started. We usually get started with the history and the horticultural and stuff like that. Typically, I try to spend 45 minutes depending on the crowd that I have. I usually look at people's faces, and if they start getting bored with a certain subject, I'll just move on to others. But what I wanted to do with this series that I'm going to work on is how we use our rocks. So this will be the first of the rock planting bonsai. Okay, so let's get started. I think I told you in the past, the hardest part of this bonsai business is the economics. So I have to do things that are affordable, yet informative. So we're working with, this one here is a boxwood, maybe 3-4 years old, but it might look older than that because you know the way I take the cuttings, right? So I take the cuttings so that it already has the movement. But anyway, I'll show you how we do the class. Okay, came out of the training pot into, this is the final training bonsai pot. It's plastic, it's for the economics. Okay, this crown should be slightly behind the center line, this way, right? And not in the center. It should be slightly off to one side or the other. Those of you in photography and art, that would be like your golden mean, right? So anyway, we got it positioned like that. And because this is a truly beginner's class, we don't break up the root ball. Well, there's a number of different reasons for that, but when we get through with this class, I want the only thing that might fail is your watering. And if you start breaking up the root ball and things like that, you don't know why it failed. So anyway, in this class, we keep the root ball intact, maybe just slightly scratching. And then we take the soil, and basically I use the same soil mix throughout most of the stages, right? Only time I change a little bit is if I'm working with very old material. But for around here, I'm using 3 parts compost, 1 part sand, and 1 part lava rock. And I think I've said it before, there's no such thing as a bonsai soil. It's whatever you put your bonsai in, and you have to vary it by your region. Okay, so anyway, see how it starts to come together, right? And then what we'll do is like that. See, then it looks like it's always been like that. It doesn't look like it came out of the can. Well, you know, one of the things we're trying to do is to create a situation where this tree is not a 3-year-old, but it might be a big tree out in nature that might be 100 years old. So what happens with mature tree is they start to lift up. That's why we make the crown higher than the lip of the pot. Okay, so this part is just more or less same old for me. But what I wanted to do was the next step. Okay, now a tree has to start somewhere, right? Well, if it's like a conifer or something like that, and the seed falls off of a tall tree, and it's flat, it has no place to stop. But if there was a big boulder or something like that, it will hit that and then you'll grow next to it. So quite often there is a relationship between a boulder and a tree. And that's how I try to explain it. So what we're going to do is to add a rock. Okay, I've seen this kind of stuff. They just throw rock on there and say, okay, that looks like a natural thing. No, it's not. Okay, it should be very natural. It should be a boulder and not a rock on surface. Okay, now size-wise it's getting better. But if you were to place it like this, look at this line going this way, right? It splits it. But if you take this and turn it like that, what happens is it takes your eye to the tree. So the rock that you place should work to enhance your tree. So not to be a distraction or to separate, rock and tree. See, different kinds of rock give you different presentation. Or this is one of Hero's trademark. I like to make these flat. So you can kind of sit down there and eat your bento. Bento is Japanese for a little lunch or picnic, But for this tree, I don't think so. A lot of times, the first rock you grab tends to be the best. So I'll go ahead and set this thing up the way I think it should be. Oh yeah, this, you got to make sure everything, all the new soil gets packed in really good. But you can see that this rock looks pretty natural, right? So this should not look like a rock, but a boulder that was in place and the tree grew near it. Then I carefully monitor my new students and make sure they put the proper amount of this time-release fertilizer. So this will take care of this tree for a whole year, or at least a whole growing season. Now, I could give a big long lecture on fertilizing, but most people don't remember. And then, like I was saying, if something bad happens to this, it's only the watering, because we did not break up the root ball. We are using the safe fertilizer that'll take care of it for a whole year. And then I make sure that they don't overdo it. Some people put so much in there that if you over fertilize, it'll burn and kill the tree. So anyway, this is how we do it. Okay, this is the part that gets everybody all excited, putting the moss on. See, it kind of completes this project, and because this is crowned a little bit higher, it keeps the soil from washing off, but it's mainly the aesthetics. Now, as it starts to warm up, the moths tend to turn brown. They're not dying, they're going dormant. So the summer months is not so pretty. In fact, that's the hardest part of getting ready for my classes in summer, is going to find decent moss that's still green. Okay, then let's get to the final finish. Okay, final finish. We have different colored gravel. So we put that on, and it gives that nice finish. It's like your cake and the icing. See? Simple. Now, I've done, I think thousands of people have come through and taken this intro class. Well, I used to teach through our local junior college, and they would send people out here, not for credit, just for fun kind of thing. And at times I had like 15, 16 people, and I had to get them out. Well, that one we allowed 3 hours because there's so many. But typically, we only do small groups. In fact, a lot of times I'll do 1 and 2. But what I don't do is too much on top in terms of what they should do. Up on top, yeah, I don't do too much in terms of what they should do because, you see, all the material that I supply, because I've been putting this movement and taper in there, right? So the basic trunk is in place. And these branches, or the leaves on the branches, when they get pruned and make a mistake, it comes back. So I just encourage people to get comfortable with it. As long as you're not using a saw, you really can't go wrong. So for beginners, all you need is something with a point. It doesn't have to be so-called bonsai tool. And then what happens is, because we have the soil, added soil, and the fertilizer, these will continue to grow fairly rapidly. So you make a mistake and you can come back and fix it again. Just like a bad haircut. And some people like to show the trunk more than others. It becomes more or less personal choice. So anyway, after this bottom part, I let people go and do that top on their own. So anyway, that's what I do in my introduction to bonsai class. So if you went to your typical nursery, a 2 and 3 year old trees like this, actually it's a shrub, will be in a 1 gallon. And then you have to cut the roots and everything else, and you could lead to failures if you don't do the right technique at the right season. Versus, I've been training in these smaller containers that pops right into this training pot. So I try to make it so that it's fail-proof and we could do it all year long. So anyway, the way I've been doing it is people just contact me and then we just set it up. So if you want a one-on-one, that's okay. The other day we had a couple drove all the way from Reno, which is over 100 miles, to take the class. And the week before that, just before Mother's Day, Jen and her family and friend was here. 4 mothers. Oh, that was a very fun class. What happened was I got to this part here. I said, you know, this is all individual, so you could do whatever you want, and they went crazy. Some of the stuff they did was very interesting. It would have never crossed my mind to do it like that. But anyway, I think that bonsai should be a very personal thing, but I wanted to cover the relationship between the rock and the bonsai, because this is going to be the series on rock planting. Actually, it's planting with a rock, I guess. But anyway, I'll see you another chapter because it's getting ready on the next chapter soon, right here.